Two times in my life I have seen something which I could call a fiery chariot in the sky. It is a luminous yellow object moving across the sky a little faster than a plane, slightly larger than the size of the moon. Sparks of light fall off it just like sparklers people sometimes use at New Year's Eve and on birthday cakes. It doesn't make any sound, the silence seems to accompany it. There are references to fiery chariots in the sky throughout our history, and when I saw this phenomenon, I realized how relevant this term would have been for ancient peoples to use. I have seen it described in a couple of places, and each description closely matches what I saw. In the Old Testament of the Bible, it is recorded in the second book of Kings that Elijah was taken into the sky by a fiery chariot upon the eve of his death. And there are fiery chariots depicted in paintings, such as the Crucifixion of Christ in 1350, and the Madonna with Saint Giovanni in the 15th century. Much less widely known was the record of upon the passing of the Most Holy Sri Ramana Maharshi on the 14th of April 1950, an extremely bright, slow-moving and silent meteor appeared above where his body lay, as recorded by the Indian Observatory across southern India. The first one I saw, I was 19 and in a park at night with a girl. At the time I thought to myself it was a comet. As I have grown older, I eventually researched the difference between comets, meteors and satellites, and I find that whilst I do not have any indication of what these fiery chariots are, they do not match the description of comets. We had been at the house party of the girl I was sitting in the park with. We were both mutual friends of my housemate, and I also found her interesting because I had dreamed of the moment when first meeting her. When we first started dating, there was some kind of heavy and psychic circumstance which happened at night that I do not quite understand, except that we were breaking up. We took a long drive south together and stayed overnight in accommodation. It was a really perfect feeling. After that, we lived together for a few years in different cities. And the next day, her father had phoned her from New Caledonia, which was where he lived and where she and her brother had been born. The leader of one of the tribes in the more remote north of the island had contacted him, which was not a simple task because apparently the nearest telephone was very far away and he had walked to reach it. This was actually before the days of widespread mobile telephone use. At the time, neither my girlfriend nor myself used a mobile phone. The leader of the tribe had had a dream about Jean-Paul's daughter whom he had known, and he hastened to inform him, because in Numian culture dreams are very sacred. He had dreamed that she was crossing golden rivers with a young man, and that many Aboriginal spirits were around them, taking care of them. This was so unusual that Jean-Paul had phoned his daughter immediately. It was in the afternoon and I was sitting beside her in her sunroom. The leader of the tribe had told her father that this dream meant very good things had happened to his daughter regarding love. The party which was being thrown at her house is an indistinct memory. Her other housemates were more country and serious types of people than my creative group of friends. For example, one of the guys living there whose birthday was the actual reason for the party intended to join the police force after graduation. Because I had played high school football with his best friend who was a couple of years older than me, I guess they partially accepted me. The girl of the Golden River dream was a wild free spirit born in another land, and her social group of friends were very urbane and cultural, at least half of which who were from Europe and America. So it must have been a slightly disjointed party. We were feeling somewhat higher vibrational moods and so had left. That is something I remember about us. We both liked quiet places, especially those left untouched to nature. We had walked towards the base of the mountain near her house. This mountain is part of national parkland and covered darkly in trees of subtropical rainforest. The stars were very clear and the universe was so whole and cosmic. It was a pretty elevated moment. There is a large botanical garden just below this mountain. She climbed the wire fence before me to get into the closed grounds. Whilst not an entirely elegant motion, her energetic determination impressed me, and I followed her. When I recall going into this park, there is a thin facet of fear which laces into me that I don't know why. I have the image of a Doberman guard dog barking with mist coming from his muzzle, which has nothing to do that night. Perhaps this is because one day around this period I had outrun a Doberman that had gotten so close I could feel its very breath on my calves, after knocking on a neighbour's house seeking signature for some petition my housemates were doing. The actual image is a memory I have of a cold late afternoon, and the sun is indistinct, in a park which is in the mountains where I had been taken as a young child with my little sister by our parents. We had gotten delayed in some gardens and the gates had been locked. Somehow my father and mother got us out. When I look back into this garden, there is a Doberman guard dog standing further away, taunt and barking at us. This memory seems pretty fantastic and imaginative, and the memory itself is in the daylight, and when we climbed this fence it was at night, so the association is subconscious. What I remember was that she and I had lain on our backs in the centre of the park. The stars were so bright it was as though there was a full moon to see by. We were holding hands. Suddenly the bright luminous object, a fiery chariot in the sky, traced its sparkling path above us, moving from north to south. It moved majestically, silently, and at a deliberate, slow pace which enabled ample time to observe it. I remember thinking, wow, this is some kind of comet, and then experiencing a very real effect of being drawn directly up into the stars. The last thing I really remember is how it looked like a huge sparkler being traced across the night sky. The next thing the girl of the Golden Ribbon Dream and I did was sit up. We returned to the party. We did not discuss what we saw. Although for the immediate years afterwards I pushed it from my mind, I did remember it. Is it possible we did speak of it earlier whilst we were in the park, but I failed to recall? A few days afterwards I had tried speaking to her about it, and the way she had answered had given me the impression it was something both mysterious and that which she understood without discussing any further. Years later, when we were breaking up, I tried speaking to her again about this memory. I had held it for all that time we were together, and felt that it was significant, that it represented something of meaning perhaps, because it had happened at the same time as the Golden River Dream. She seemed to have absolutely no recall of the event at all, yet she did remember going to the park and what my housemate had said to us when we returned to the party. My housemate walked directly to us when we had returned to the house party. There were a lot less people. I asked her about some of my friends who had cleared. She had come up to us because she wanted to leave too, but did not wish to do so without saying goodbye to her friend who was the girl of the Golden River Dream. "Where were you guys?" she asked us. "You've been gone for ages and ages," laughing suggestively. When we protested that it had been no more than 25 minutes, or 40 minutes at a stretch, she said that was impossible. We had been missing for 3.5 hours. We felt that even saying 40 minutes was too long, but we wanted to confirm with her what she was saying so adamantly. I remember the three of us spending some time at that point discussing this. However, the two girls became uninterested once it was established and failed to understand why I was so emphatically following it. This was a pretty unusual circumstance regarding lost time, and I don't think I have ever tried to describe it to another person. The memory of that fiery chariot moving through the sky stuck with me. I had read Von Daniken in high school, and as I mentioned earlier, it occurred to me that it seemed a very appropriate name for the thing I saw in that sky if one had been living in ancient times. Years later I started to think about it. Whenever the conversation leading to UFOs arose, I would always tell people I had never seen one, although I began to wonder if what I had seen that night was actually a comet. The second fiery chariot I saw in the sky was many years later, 4 or 5 years before the time of writing this, and maybe 14 years after that moment I had experienced with the girl of the Golden River Dream. I was living in the suburbs, which is almost 40 kilometers from the city. The stars were very bright and apparent, whereas when I live in the city they are mostly invisible. I worked in the day in an office in the city and had recently returned to the habit of making electronic music compositions. So at that time, DJing and working on original productions was the only other thing I did aside from work and going out to hear music events at many different settings and locations throughout the city. I had been working on a track that night and I wanted to finish it. I actually felt like it was a voice urging me to complete the work, or was it a more general desire? I stayed past 2 a.m. making this piece, which I never played publicly, although I did post it online and my friend had liked it, which I remember being a great compliment. When I was eventually finished making the music, I had gone outside to sit on the edge of the driveway and to look up at the stars and the universe smoking. Well, I hoped it was worth it knowing how tired I was going to be at work the next day. I had finished my cigarette and was about to go inside when I heard a voice inside my head say to me, "Just wait." Maybe because I was tired, as I was working pretty hard in an office at the day, and I'd worked over 7 hours straight on this music. But I thought I should sit there just in case something did happen, so I rolled another cigarette. I was less than halfway through when the voice in my head spoke again. It said, "Look to your left." I didn't really need to look to my left so much, as the seat I'd taken on some wooden steps faced north. Rather, I needed to turn to face forward again as I had been hunched forward and leaning to my right, looking at my cigarette and examining the blades of the lawn in the darkness. I saw tracing in the sky moving from west to east a fiery chariot. It moved in the deliberate speed with the same unmistakable yellow light and sparks flying off its passage. This time I felt a chill of fear about to slide through my body, and I constrained myself to see it. I immediately recalled having seen this same kind of thing those years before with the girl of the Golden River Dream. The object moved across the sky and past the tree line. I am situated on an elevated part, and towards the east where the object's trajectory suggested it was going to intersect with the earth, there is a great expanse of wooded land which extends and unravels as untouched nature for a long section before reaching the ocean. At around this point in my life, in the same location, I had seen something else in the sky that was strange and unnerving, looking towards the east. It happened 2 nights in a row, and afterwards I never saw it again. It seems reasonable for someone to suggest it was an hallucination or trick of tired eyesight, but I was very careful to observe it. I had come back from listening to some music in the city with my friend. It was very late, about 2:40 a.m., and I was parking my car in the street outside my house. A star which I could see towards the eastern horizon each night always intrigued me, the way it sparkled in many colours, and not the single white light of a star. I've heard these referred to as disco ball stars by some. The science is that these are stars on the horizon whose light is diffracted by the lens effect of the Earth's atmosphere at that angle. It obviously cannot be one star but many at a particular altitude in the sky. As I locked my car, the disco ball star was where it always was, towards the lower part of the eastern sky. When I looked at it on this night, I could see what resembled a second disco ball star lower towards the horizon, except this was moving steadily north. I watched this move, assuming it was a plane, until it was directly below the first disco ball star in my line of sight. That was when the strange thing happened. The moving light stopped moving and held itself stationary in the sky, precisely in line with the star I could see above it, and it now resembled a disco ball star exactly. At the same moment the first moving light stopped, the first star above it began moving north at the same speed, as though they were in relay. That was really weird, and I watched it head north, possibly as far as to be tracing the coastline. The next evening I told my friend I'd seen something weird last night and I wanted to be home early. Either it was because of the fact I'd seen these strange stars in the sky and was in need of rest, or because I did not want to be outside so late at night again and see it. I'd driven home at 10:30 and was parking the car when I saw the exact same event I had witnessed 2:40 a.m. the previous evening. This pretty much defies any common sense of logic or method. I have heard other people describe the same phenomena as this, and in one sense, it seems pretty obvious what I saw. In another, perhaps it is more mystically paranormal in its nature. To have been hallucinating would be unlikely, as the same thing occurred in the same place. At both times when I saw this happen, I had been watching the moving light, and both times it became stationary while I observed it. A couple of years later, my father, who was extremely skeptical, was observing satellites with me at my urging one night. We both observed a satellite moving upwards in the sky northeast, and suddenly stopped moving, becoming completely stationary. My father said to me if he had not seen it himself, he would never believe it. And earlier that year in the evening twilight, I had seen some glowing objects move across the sky towards the west with my mother. I had called out to my mother, who then saw with me an arcing light in the sky turn as it moved towards the northwest. Both the objects went into a small cloud in the sky, but did not reappear on the other side. The fact that this object was turning in the sky and not on a straight path trajectory, and that logically it had either disappeared inside the cloud, or had come to stop within the cloud, was something my mother did not wish to dwell too deeply upon.